I smiled and raised my glass as they toasted my demotion. 15 years of my life, reduced to a wooden plaque that read, Founder's Daughter. The crystal champagne flute trembled slightly in my grip as I watched my younger brother Mark beam from his seat at the head of the table, my seat by rights. My name is Brianna, and I turned my father's failing hardware store into a $10 million enterprise. But apparently, that wasn't enough to earn the CEO position I'd spent my entire adult life working toward. To Mark Hanson, our new Chief Executive Officer. My father's voice boomed across our family dining room where we gathered for our traditional Christmas dinner. And to Brianna for supporting the family business all these years. Supporting, always supporting, never leading. The other executives and board members, all men naturally, clinked their glasses and murmured their approval. My mother caught my eye from across the table, her smile strained. She knew, she always knew, and she never said a word. Speech, someone called out, and Mark stood up, straightening his designer tie that probably cost more than our first store's monthly rent. Well, wow, he chuckled, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. This is unexpected. I nearly choked on my champagne. Unexpected. He'd spent the last 5 years floating between Buddhist retreats and startup ventures that went nowhere, while I worked 14-hour days expanding our market share. But Dad's right. It's time for fresh blood, a man's touch at the helm. Mark grinned. No offense, sis. None taken, I replied, my voice steady despite the inferno raging in my chest. You'll do great things, I'm sure. Carlos, our operations manager, shot me a concerned look. He knew better than anyone what I'd sacrificed for this company. The missed dates, the canceled vacations, the endless nights poring over expansion strategies. Brianna, my father called out, come up here and give your brother a proper welcome. I rose smoothly, my black cocktail dress catching the light from the chandelier I'd helped pick out when we renovated the family home. Walking to the front of the room felt like crossing a battlefield in heels. Mark, I said, turning to face the crowd, I remember when you were 10 and you used to play store in the warehouse. Gentle laughter rippled through the room. You'd stack empty boxes and pretend to be Dad. Mark's smile flickered. He remembered what came next. You knocked over an entire shelf of premium power tools. $30,000 in damaged merchandise. I paused, letting that sink in. I covered for you. Told Dad it was my fault for not securing the shelving properly. Ancient history, Mark said quickly, but I wasn't finished. That's what family does, right? We support each other. I raised my glass again. To the new CEO, may you handle the real inventory better than the empty boxes. Scattered chuckles, more uncomfortable this time. My father's face had darkened, but he couldn't say anything without making a scene. Later, as guests filtered out into the snowy December night, he cornered me in the kitchen. That was inappropriate, he growled, his breath heavy with bourbon. You're supposed to be setting an example. Like the example you set? I loaded plates into the dishwasher with precise movements, giving the company to someone who couldn't tell a Phillips head from a flathead 6 months ago. Mark has vision, leadership quality. He'll learn the details. I slammed the dishwasher shut. I doubled our revenue last quarter. I opened 3 new locations. You did your job, he cut me off. But this company needs someone who can take it to the next level, someone who can command respect. Because I'm what? Too soft? Too emotional? The words tasted like acid. Because you're my daughter, he said, as if that explained everything. And I need to think about the future. I looked at him then, really looked at him. Gray hair, weathered face, that familiar stubborn set to his jaw. For the first time I saw him clearly, not as my father, but as an obstacle. You're right, I said quietly. We should all think about the future. He seemed surprised by my sudden calm, but satisfied. He patted my shoulder awkwardly before shuffling off to join the remaining guests. I stood alone in the kitchen, fingering the cheap plaque they'd given me, Founder's Daughter, as if that was all I'd ever been, all I'd ever be. They thought this was my end, my final chapter in the story of Hanson Hardware. But they didn't know about the papers sitting in my home office, about the meetings I'd had with suppliers, about the new company I'd incorporated 6 months ago when I first saw the writing on the wall. They thought this was my end. It was only my opening move. 6 months before that Christmas dinner, I sat in my office reviewing next year's leadership forecasts. The spring sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the spreadsheet that confirmed what my gut had been telling me for months. "These projections," I said to Carlos, tapping my screen. "Notice anything interesting about the executive restructuring plan?" Carlos leaned over my shoulder, his forehead creasing. "They've already penciled in Mark as CEO, but he's not even—" He straightened up, meeting my eyes. "How long have you known that my father would never let a woman run his precious company?" I closed the laptop. "Probably since I was 12 and he told me I should focus on looking pretty instead of learning inventory management." "What are you going to do?" I pulled a folder from my desk drawer and handed it to him. "I incorporated a new company last week, Nexora Systems." Carlos flipped through the papers, his eyebrows rising. "Smart home technology distribution? This is—" "The future," I finished. "The same future I pitched to the board 3 months ago. The one my father called too risky and ahead of its time." "And you want me to—" "Run it with me as CEO." I stood up and walked to the window. "They'll expect me to stay here to keep playing the good daughter while Mark runs this company into the ground. But we both know Hanson Hardware needs to evolve or die." Carlos was quiet for a long moment. "Your father trusts me. I could stay, feed you information." "No," I turned back to him. "I need you visible, above board. They'll never suspect you're working with me if you're openly running a competing company." A knock at the door interrupted us. Samantha, our corporate attorney, strode in without waiting for a response. "The contracts are ready," she announced, dropping a thick stack of papers on my desk. "Exclusive distribution rights for the entire U.S. market. Once you sign these, no one, including Hanson Hardware, can sell these products without going through Nexora." "You're sure it's airtight?" I asked. Samantha's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the papers. "They won't find a single loophole. I made sure of it." "What about your position here?" Carlos asked her. "Already lined up my replacement. Some fresh-faced kid from Harvard who won't know what hit him when everything goes down." I picked up a pen, its weight suddenly significant. "Once I sign these, there's no going back." "There's no going back anyway," Carlos said softly. "You know that." I did know. I'd known it since finding that email thread between my father and the board members, discussing Mark's natural leadership qualities while dismissing my years of proven success as good support work. The pen moved across the paper in swift, angry strokes. "It's done," I said, pushing the contracts toward Samantha. "Make it official." Later that afternoon, I sat in yet another board meeting, watching my father praise Mark's latest initiative, a poorly researched expansion plan that would have bankrupted us within a year. "Brianna," my father's voice cut through my thoughts, "you've been quiet. What do you think of your brother's proposal?" I smiled, the same smile I'd perfected over years of being patted on the head and told to know my place. "It's very ambitious, but have we considered the supply chain implications?" "Always with the details," Mark laughed. "Sometimes you have to think bigger, sis. Take risks." "Speaking of risks," I replied smoothly, "have you secured the smart home tech lines for this expansion? Those products account for 40% of your projected revenue. Mark's confidence wavered. Well, we have existing relationships with. Actually, I cut in, I heard those distribution rights were just acquired by a new player in the market. Nexora Systems, I believe. The room grew quiet. My father's eyes narrowed. I'm sure we can negotiate, he said firmly. I gathered my papers, standing to leave. I'm sure someone will try. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with our Asian suppliers. As I walked out, I heard Mark ask, Who runs this Nexora company anyway? I paused at the door. I'm sure you'll find out soon enough. Back in my office, I emailed Samantha one final instruction. No distribution exceptions, even to Hanson Hardware. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Having dinner with your father and Mark tonight? They're discussing the future. Please join us. I typed back. Can't. Working late. Someone has to mind the details. Setting my phone aside, I pulled up the incorporation papers for Nexora Systems. The familiar anger rose in my chest as I remembered all the times I'd been told to wait my turn, to be patient, to support the men in charge. Well, I was done waiting, done supporting, done being the good daughter who smiled and nodded while they built their boys' club on the foundation of my work. They wanted me to know my place. I was about to show them exactly where that was. Back in the present, 2 weeks after that Christmas dinner, I watched through Nexora's office windows as Mark's face plastered every business news channel. He'd called a press conference to announce Hanson Hardware's bold new direction. Turn it up, I told Samantha, who grabbed the remote. Excited to announce our exclusive partnership with cutting-edge smart home technology providers. Mark was saying, his smile too wide, too confident. Hanson Hardware will be the only destination for these revolutionary products. Does he know? Carlos asked, entering my office with coffee. That he's announcing a partnership that doesn't exist? I took a sip from the cup he offered. No, but he's about to find out. My phone buzzed. Veronica, Mark's new executive assistant, had texted. Emergency board meeting called for 3 p.m. He's freaking out. I'd met Veronica for coffee last week after noticing how Mark relegated her to fetching his dry cleaning despite her MBA and 5 years of industry experience. She'd been surprisingly direct. He makes me organize his dating app matches, she'd told me, stirring her latte. Yesterday he asked me to alphabetize his protein powder collection. Sounds frustrating for someone with your qualifications? Frustrating doesn't begin to cover it. She leaned forward. I saw your name on some old strategy documents. The company's growth trajectory. It was all you, wasn't it? I'd simply smiled and slid her my business card. If you ever want to work somewhere that values talent over testosterone. Now, watching Mark sweat through his designer suit on TV, I knew Veronica had been worth every penny of the signing bonus I'd promised her. My phone rang. It was Jalen, Hanson's strategic buyer. Please tell me you can explain why our suppliers are saying we don't have distribution rights for the smart tech line, he said without preamble. Have you tried calling Nexora Systems? Their CEO's office keeps redirecting me to legal. He paused. Brianna, what's going on? Ask Mark. He's the one who announced an exclusive partnership without securing the contract first. After hanging up, I turned to Carlos. How long until they figure it out? The press release is already being picked apart online. Trading's been suspended twice. My father called next. I let it go to voicemail. Brianna, his message growled. Whatever game you're playing, stop it now. Your brother needs your support in this transition. Call me back immediately. I deleted the message and checked my watch. 2:05 p.m. Shall we head over? Carlos asked. Let's give them a few minutes to stew. At 3:30, we walked into Hanson Hardware's boardroom. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Mark jumped up when he saw us. "Where have you been? We've got a crisis." "Sit down, Mark," my father snapped. He turned to me. "What do you know about Nexora Systems?" I took my time settling into a chair, smoothing my skirt. "I know they hold exclusive distribution rights for the smart home product line you just promised to every major retailer in the country." "That's impossible," Mark sputtered. "We have relationships with these suppliers going back years." "Relationships aren't contracts," I replied. "Maybe you should have checked that before making promises to the press." My father's face reddened. "You're behind this somehow. You've always been jealous of your brothers." "Success?" I cut in. "What success would that be? The failed startups, the meditation retreats, or maybe you mean his successful strategy of being born male?" "How dare you?" "No, how dare you?" I stood up, planting both hands on the table. "I built this company into what it is today. I created these supplier relationships. I developed these expansion strategies. And you handed it all to someone who couldn't tell a profit margin from a profit motive." Mark's face had gone pale. "We can fix this. We'll offer them whatever they want." "They don't want anything from you," Carlos said quietly, "because they already have an exclusive contract with us." The room went silent as understanding dawned on their faces. "Us?" my father whispered. I smiled, the same smile I'd given them at Christmas. "Carlos is CEO of Nexora Systems." I paused for effect. "And I own controlling interests." "You can't do this to us," Mark said, his voice cracking. "We're family." "Family?" I picked up my briefcase. "I stopped being family the moment you took credit for my life's work. Now I'm just another competitor." I headed for the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Mark, you might want to prepare a statement walking back that press conference. Lying to shareholders is generally frowned upon." As Carlos and I walked out, I heard my father shouting for someone to get their lawyers on the phone, but we all knew it was too late. The game had changed, and I was done playing by their rules. A week later, I sat across from Mark and my father in Nexora's conference room. The table between us might as well have been an ocean. Samantha sat to my right, a stack of contracts before her. Carlos stood by the window, watching the city below. "These terms are ridiculous," Mark said, throwing down the proposal. "A 50% markup? Minimum order quantities that would fill 3 warehouses?" "Market rate," I replied calmly, "for an exclusive cutting-edge product line." "Market rate?" My father's face was turning that dangerous shade of purple I remembered from childhood arguments. "This is highway robbery." "No," I corrected him, "this is business. The same business you taught me. Leverage your advantages, remember?" "We're your family," he growled. "You were my family at Christmas, too. Didn't stop you from humiliating me in front of the entire board." Mark leaned forward, trying his best executive pose. "Look, sis, I know you're upset." "Upset?" I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make him flinch. "I'm not upset, Mark. I'm negotiating. But if you'd rather not stock the most anticipated smart home products of the year, that's your choice. I'm sure your competitors will be happy to pay our rates." "Your rates are impossible," my father snapped. "You'll bankrupt us." "Actually," Samantha interjected, sliding forward another document, "our financial analysis suggests Hanson Hardware could manage these terms if you hadn't leveraged the company for Mark's expansion plan." I watched their faces as that sank in. The expansion plan I would have shot down in a heartbeat if I'd still been in charge. "How did you get these numbers?" Mark whispered. "You should screen your executive assistants better," I replied. "Veronica sends her regards." My father stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. "You planted a spy?" "I didn't plant anything. Veronica came to me after Mark had her reorganize his sock drawer instead of letting her use her MBA. This is corporate espionage. No, Carlos spoke up from the window. This is karma. The door opened and my mother walked in. I hadn't invited her. Mom, I said, keeping my voice neutral, this is a closed meeting. I'm still a shareholder, she replied, taking a seat, and this needs to stop. Does it? I turned to face her fully. Like you stopped Dad from undermining me for 20 years? Like you stopped them from taking everything I built? Brianna, please. Her voice cracked. We can work this out as a family. Family? I stood up, my hands flat on the table. Where was family when Dad told investors I was too emotional for leadership? Where was family when Mark took credit for my expansion strategy? Where was family when you sat there at Christmas and watched them reduce 15 years of my life to a participation trophy? The silence that followed was deafening. You want to work something out? I continued, my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. Here are your options. Accept our terms or watch your market share disappear while your competitors stock our products. Your choice. You're betraying this family, my father said, his voice low and dangerous. You set the market rate for betrayal at Christmas dinner, I replied. I'm just meeting it. Mark was staring at the financial documents, his face ashen. Dad, these numbers? We can't survive without this product line. We'll find another supplier, my father insisted. There is no other supplier, Carlos said. We made sure of that. My mother stood up suddenly. Brianna, a word in private? I followed her into the hallway where she turned to me with tears in her eyes. I know I should have stood up for you more, she said, but destroying the company won't heal that hurt. This isn't about healing, I replied. It's about consequences. You're becoming just like him, stubborn, unforgiving. No, I said, stepping back toward the conference room. I'm becoming what he always wanted, a ruthless business leader. Funny how he doesn't like it when it's turned against him. Back in the room, Mark and my father were huddled over the contracts, whispering furiously. Tick-tock, Samantha said, checking her watch. Our other meetings start in 30 minutes. Other meetings? Mark's head snapped up. Your competitors have expressed strong interest in exclusive regional rights, I explained. We're entertaining offers this afternoon. My father's face went from purple to white. You wouldn't. Try me. Mark grabbed a pen with shaking hands. Where do I sign? Mark, don't. My father started. We don't have a choice, Dad. You saw the numbers. I watched as Mark signed away Hanson Hardware's future, one dotted line at a time. My father stormed out without a word. My mother lingered at the door. I hope this makes you happy, she said softly. I met her eyes. It's not about happiness anymore. It's about justice. The door closed behind her with a final click. The next month passed in a blur of numbers, each one worse than the last for Hanson Hardware. I watched their decline through reports Veronica sent me, each one a small victory that somehow felt hollow. Another store closing in Portland, Carlos announced, dropping a newspaper on my desk. That's 3 this quarter. I barely glanced up from my laptop. They're over-leveraged. Mark's expansion plan was... Brianna, Carlos cut me off. When was the last time you slept? I checked my watch, realized I couldn't remember. The office had become my home, revenge, my sustenance. I'm fine. You're not fine. You just snapped at Samantha for bringing you the wrong coffee. She knows I hate caramel. She's never gotten your order wrong in 3 years. Carlos sat down across from me. You're burning out. Before I could argue, my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Found something you should see. Come into your office. Great, I muttered. Another guilt trip. But when my mother arrived 30 minutes later, she wasn't carrying photos of family holidays or childhood memories. She had an envelope yellowed with age. "I found this while cleaning your father's study," she said, placing it on my desk. "It's from 15 years ago." I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from my father to an investor, dated just after I'd started working at the company. My hands shook as I read, "While my daughter shows promise in operations, there's no room for softness at the top. My son Mark will eventually take the reins. Brianna's role will be to prepare the way for him." "He planned this," I whispered, "from the very beginning." "There's more," my mother said quietly. The next page detailed how my father had manipulated projects to ensure Mark got credit for my work, how he'd steered investors away from my initiatives, how he'd systematically undermined my authority while building Mark's image. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked her. "Because I'm tired of secrets." She met my eyes. "And because you deserve to know the truth." "And what am I supposed to do with the truth?" "Whatever you need to." She stood up. "I've enabled his behavior long enough." After she left, I called Samantha. "How would this play in the media?" "A systematic campaign of gender discrimination by a CEO against his own daughter." I could hear her smile. "It would play very well." But before we could act, my phone rang. It was Veronica. "Mark's losing it," she said without preamble. "He just fired 3 department heads and promoted his gym buddy to CFO." "His gym buddy?" "The guy can barely work Excel. The board's having an emergency meeting tomorrow." I forwarded the letter to Samantha. "Make it public." "Brianna," Carlos warned, "this will destroy them completely." "They destroyed themselves," I snapped. "I'm just providing the evidence." The story broke the next morning. "Family business or family betrayal?" screamed the headlines. Social media exploded with outrage. Hanson Hardware's stock plummeted. Mark called me, his voice cracking. "Did you do this?" "No, Mark, Dad did this 15 years ago." "The board wants my resignation. They're talking about lawsuits." "Karma's interesting that way." "Please," he begged, "help me fix this." I thought about all the times I'd fixed his mistakes, covered his tracks, made him look good. No. Later that night, Carlos found me staring out my office window at the city lights. "You haven't celebrated," he observed. "What's to celebrate? I won by becoming exactly what they always said I was: cold, ruthless, unfeeling." "That's not—" "I just got off the phone with Jalen," I cut him off. "He's resigning tomorrow. Says he can't work for either side anymore because we're all toxic." "He's not wrong," Carlos said softly. I turned to face him. "Are you leaving too?" "No, but I'm worried about you. This victory is eating you alive." "It's not about victory anymore." I picked up the letter from my desk. "It's about—" "Justice?" He shook his head. "Or is it just pain now?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A news alert. My father had suffered a minor stroke during an emergency board meeting. He was stable but hospitalized. My mother's text followed immediately. "This is what you wanted, right?" I stared at the message, feeling nothing and everything at once. Carlos touched my shoulder gently. "What now?" "Now?" I looked at my reflection in the window, barely recognizing myself. "Now we finish what they started." But as I said it, I wondered who exactly I was finishing, them or me. The press conference was a train wreck. I watched it live from my office, unable to look away as Mark tried to set the record straight about our father's letter. "My sister has always been valued at Hanson Hardware," he stammered, sweat visible through his expensive shirt. "These allegations of discrimination are—" "Is it true your father groomed you for the position while actively undermining your sister?" a reporter called out. "Did you know about the letter?" shouted another. Mark's eyes darted around like a cornered animal. That's not. The important thing is our commitment to our customers. Is it true your recent expansion plan has left the company on the brink of bankruptcy? The live stream cut off abruptly. My phone immediately lit up with a text from Veronica. He just vomited in a potted plant and ran off stage. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. Samantha burst into my office without knocking. We have a problem. Someone accessed our servers last night. What? I sat up straight. How? Internal access point. They were looking at our distribution contracts and launch calendar. Veronica? She's not responding to calls. I grabbed my coat. Where was her last known location? The coffee shop near Hanson Hardware's main office. She was supposed to meet me there an hour ago with some documents. I found Veronica sitting alone in the back of the coffee shop, staring into an untouched latte. Planning to sell our data to the highest bidder? I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. She didn't look up. Mark offered me $500,000 for Nexora's launch calendar. And I told him to shove it. Now she met my eyes. But I kept the data. Why? Insurance. I wanted to see what kind of monster you were becoming. The word hit me like a slap. Monster? Look at yourself, Brianna. When is the last time you did anything except plot revenge? You're not sleeping, barely eating. You've pushed away everyone who cares about you. They deserved what? To lose everything? To watch their life's work crumble? She leaned forward. Your father had a stroke. Is that enough punishment? You don't understand. I understand perfectly. They hurt you deeply, systematically, unforgivably. But you're letting that hurt turn you into something worse than they ever were. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Hanson Hardware stock had been suspended from trading again. They're finished anyway, Veronica continued. The board is forcing a sale. Your revenge is complete. So what's left of you? I thought about Carlos's worried looks, Samantha's careful distance, the way my mother couldn't meet my eyes anymore. I didn't access your servers to steal data, Veronica said quietly. I did it to show you what you've become, someone who trusts no one, who sees betrayal around every corner, who's just like him, I finished. She nodded slowly. The question is that who you want to be? My phone rang. It was Mark. The buyers want to meet, he said without greeting. Some private equity firm. They're offering pennies on the dollar. And I need your help, one last time. Not for me, but for the employees. 3,000 people are about to lose their jobs because of our family drama. I thought about all the people who'd worked for us over the years, the families that depended on those paychecks. Send me the details, I said finally. After hanging up, I looked at Veronica. You kept the data as leverage, but not against us, against yourself. What do you mean? You needed to prove you could have betrayed us but chose not to, because that's what real loyalty looks like. I stood up, something I've forgotten lately. Back at my office, Carlos was waiting with more news. The private equity firm? He said. They're going to strip the company for parts, sell off the real estate, liquidate inventory, fire everyone. I stared out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, 3,000 families were about to get very bad news. Unless, Carlos added, unless what? Unless someone else buys them first, someone who knows the business inside and out, someone who could actually turn it around. I turned to face him. You can't be serious. Why not? You won the war, Brianna. Maybe it's time to stop burning bridges and start building something new. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. Your father's asking for you. I looked at the message for a long moment, then at Carlos. Get Samantha, I said finally. We need to draft a proposal. For what? A hostile takeover, but this time we're going to do it right. Because maybe Veronica was right. Maybe the real question wasn't what I could destroy, but what I could build from the ashes. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. My father looked smaller somehow, diminished against the white sheets. He turned his head as I entered, his eyes clearing with recognition. Come to finish what you started? His voice was weak, but still carried that familiar edge. No. I sat in the chair beside his bed. I came to make you an offer. More revenge. A buyout. Nexora Systems will purchase Hanson hardware at fair market value. He tried to sit up, wincing. So you can destroy everything I built? So I can save it. I placed the proposal on his bedside table. 3,000 jobs, 40 years of business relationships, a legacy worth preserving despite everything. Why? Because I'm tired of burning things down. I met his gaze. Aren't you? Before he could answer, Mark burst into the room, waving his phone. The private equity firm just doubled their offer. Sit down, I told him. Both of you need to hear this. I laid out my plan: merge Hanson Hardware with Nexora Systems, modernize the operations, retain the employees, and create something stronger than either company could be alone. You'd be in charge, my father said slowly. Yes, completely. No advisory roles, no family positions, pure business. Mark slumped in his chair. What about me? You get to walk away with your shares' value instead of bankruptcy. I turned back to my father. This is my only offer. Take it or deal with the private equity vultures. My father was quiet for a long moment. You found my letter. Mom did. She chose to show me. I thought, he started, then stopped. I thought I was protecting you. This business, it's brutal. I didn't want. Save it, I cut him off. I don't need your explanations or excuses. I need your signature, yes or no. He reached for the papers with a trembling hand. Your mother was right about you. You're stronger than I ever was. That's not strength, I said quietly. That's survival. After he signed, Mark walked me to the parking lot. I really screwed up, didn't I? He asked. We all did. Some of us just started earlier than others. Back at Nexora's offices, Carlos and Samantha were waiting with champagne. Save it, I told them. We have work to do. Always work, Carlos sighed. You know, normal people celebrate victories. This isn't a victory, I replied. It's a responsibility. Veronica appeared in the doorway. The employees are asking questions. They need to hear from someone they trust. Set up an all-hands meeting, I said. Both companies, tomorrow morning. That night, I found myself back at the original Hanson hardware store, the one where I'd started as a teenager learning inventory from dusty shelves and ancient ledgers. My mother was there, standing in the empty parking lot. I knew I'd find you here, she said. Did you ever regret it? I asked, staying quiet all those years. Every day. She touched my arm gently. But you're not me, Brianna. You found your voice and used it to tear everything apart. No, you used it to force change. There's a difference. My phone buzzed. A message from Samantha. Merger documents are ready. Private equity firm is threatening litigation. Let them, I typed back. We have right of first refusal. They can't touch us. My mother read the message over my shoulder. What happens now? Now I build something new, something better. Alone? I thought about Carlos's loyalty, Veronica's honesty, Samantha's dedication. No, not alone. The next morning I stood before hundreds of nervous employees. Their faces showed the same fear I'd felt at that Christmas dinner, the same uncertainty about the future. I know you're scared, I began. Change is scary. Trust me, I know. But what we're building here isn't about revenge or power. It's about proving that success doesn't require sacrificing people for profit. I saw heads nodding, faces relaxing. Every person in this room has value. Every voice matters. And together, we're going to create something extraordinary. As I finished speaking, Carlos handed me a familiar wooden plaque, the one from Christmas. Founder's Daughter. I held it up. This was meant to define me, to put me in my place. I dropped it into a trash can. But we define ourselves, and my definition includes all of you. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. Later, Veronica found me in my office. "So," she said, "still a monster?" I smiled, my first real smile in months. "No, something much more dangerous." "What's that?" "A leader who remembers what it's like to be powerless. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's creation." The stage lights felt hot as I adjusted my microphone. The TEDx audience stretched before me, hundreds of faces waiting for wisdom about the price of vision. They wanted inspiration. I gave them truth instead. "Everyone loves a revenge story," I began. "The wronged hero, the satisfying payback. But nobody talks about what revenge costs. Not just the targets, the avenger." In the front row, Carlos nodded slightly. He'd stepped back to an advisory role last month, saying he needed space from the intensity of our work. I couldn't blame him. I spent 15 years building someone else's dream, only to watch it handed to someone else. Then I spent 6 months destroying everything I'd built, including parts of myself. Samantha had moved on too, accepting a position with a prestigious law firm. "You don't need a warrior anymore," she told me. "You need a builder." People asked me if it was worth it, if revenge satisfied the anger, healed the hurt. I paused, letting the silence fill the auditorium. The truth is, revenge is like burning down your own house to kill a spider. You might get the spider, but you're still homeless. My mother sat in the middle section next to Mark. They'd both come, despite my uncertainty about inviting them. My father had declined, his pride still recovering. But here's what nobody tells you about hitting rock bottom: it makes an excellent foundation. I clicked to the next slide, our new company logo. Not Hansen Hardware or Nexera Systems, but something new, Phoenix Innovations. We took two broken companies and created something stronger, not through destruction, but through transformation. We implemented profit sharing for all employees, created mentorship programs, promoted based on merit, not gender or connections. In the wings, Veronica gave me a thumbs up. She'd become our Chief Innovation Officer, her talent finally recognized. The hardest part wasn't the business strategy. It was facing myself in the mirror every morning and choosing who I wanted to be, the monster who burned everything down, or the leader who could build something better from the ashes. After the talk, Mark caught up with me backstage. "Nice speech," he said awkwardly. "Very honest. That's the point of healing, isn't it? Honesty." He shifted uncomfortably. "Listen, I've been thinking about what you said, about merit and talent." He handed me a business card. "My friend runs this startup incubator. They're looking for mentors." I studied the card. "You're volunteering at a women's business initiative?" "Trying to balance some karma." He managed a small smile. "Besides, someone needs to warn them about entitled brothers." Later that evening, I visited the old Hansen Hardware flagship store. The windows were dark, the shelves empty. Our new company had moved to modern facilities across town. I picked the locks, some skills never fade, and walked through the musty aisles. In the back office, buried under debris, I found the ledger I'd first managed at 19. The pages were filled with my careful handwriting, tracking every nail and bolt. My phone buzzed. A text from my father. "Watched your talk online. You're right. I'm sorry." I stared at those two words for a long time. They weren't enough, but they were something. I typed back, I know. Walking through the empty store one last time, I remembered all the dreams I'd had here, the plans I'd made, the ladders I'd climbed, the ceilings I'd hit. I pulled out my phone again and called Veronica. Remember that mentorship program we discussed? I asked. Let's double the budget and add a specific track for family business succession. Planning to prevent more stories like yours? Planning to create better ones. I stepped outside into the cool night air. Across the street, a young woman was locking up her small boutique. She saw me and waved one of our mentorship participants. My phone buzzed again. A message from Carlos. Missing your crazy intensity. Dinner tomorrow. I smiled and replied, only if you're ready to hear about my next big idea. There's always a next big idea with you, he texted back. That's why we followed you. Standing there in the darkness, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't made me whole. Building something new hadn't either. What had healed me was simpler and harder than that. I'd learned to trust again, to create instead of destroy, to lead without fear or fury. I looked up at the stars, remembering that Christmas dinner that felt like a lifetime ago, the plaque that read Founder's Daughter, the fury that had driven me to burn it all down. I didn't burn bridges anymore. I paved new ones, and yes, I still dreamed of fire sometimes. But now it was the kind that forged steel, not the kind that left ashes. That was the real price of vision and its reward.